And I kind of like where we are as a country now in race. I think we've calmed down, simmered down, and I think learning about these two would only benefit.
Breaking news, y'all. Racism is over. According to Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends, racism has calmed down and he likes where we are as far as race relations. People of color can now walk the streets in peace. No more racial profiling, no more Karens, no more racial slurs being shouted at us for merely existing. We're good now. Well, don't believe everything conservative white men have to say about race, because as you may have guessed, that's not how racism works. Racism is structural and systemic, continuously perpetuated by individuals and people in power. It's less about individual ignorance as much as it is about being able to enact prejudices and biases against people of color who have been historically marginalized, colonized, and oppressed by the greater racial majority. If people of color truly had nothing to worry about, we'd be living in a very different reality.
I'll defend my country to the very end. Then go back to where you're from, Mexico or Guatemala, where you're born here.
The reality of being a Latino in this country is that you are constantly questioned about where you're from, being told to go back to your country, being threatened with ICE and deportation, even if you're not an immigrant, and being assumed to be from Mexico, because apparently that's where all Latinos are from. But remember, racism is over.
Some people say, well, they're soft on crime. No, they're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. They want crime. They want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want to control what you have. They want reparation because they think the people that do the crime are owed that. Bullshit. They are not owed that.
The reality of being Black in this country is knowing that the U.S. did give reparations to slave owners, yet demanding what the government promised you somehow makes you a whining snowflake. But remember that comment that Brian made on Fox and Friends?
I think we've calmed down, simmered down, and I think learning about these two would only benefit.
The two people he was referencing were Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist who fought for the freedom of all enslaved Black people, and the president who not only signed the papers ending slavery in the U.S., but who also declared that reparations be paid to free Black families. It was the conservatives who derailed that promise and reversed the 40 acres and a mule order to return land back to white Confederate landowners. Ironically, Brian has written an entire book around the relationship between Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. I'm concerned. I have questions. What? And this just goes to show just how hard people really try to fight for whitewashing history based on whatever political agenda they subscribe to. The removal of the Emancipation statue in Boston is just one example of how most people truly don't understand why depictions of white folks saving them is so problematic. But wait a minute, isn't this the same Brian Kilmeade who asked a Black woman on air if she makes Kool-Aid?
Do you make Kool-Aid?
That's another... I'm going to try this.
Do I do what?
Make Kool-Aid.
No, I don't make Kool-Aid.
The same Brian who claimed that children who don't speak English are taking resources from American children?
We're going to have a couple more million people that are illegally demanding their amnesty.
And guess what? When you place them, you go into usually working class communities, which your schools are already strapped. And now all of a sudden, you have kids that don't speak English in classes taking time and energy away from your kids.
The fact is, hate crimes have been on the rise and steadily increasing. The FBI stated in 2021 that hate crime reports were the highest recorded in a 12-year period. And just this week, people decided to find out just how far they can take free speech after Elon Musk bought Twitter, the platform seeing an increase of 500% of the use of the N-word. Because as we have all been saying, free speech doesn't actually mean free speech. It means a free pass to be racist. For people like Brian and conservatives all across this country, conveniently whitewashing history and our current reality appears to be a political strategy in itself. It allows their post-racial propaganda to lift themselves up as the heroes of American politics rather than the villains. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at eliana.chinea. I'm Constanza Eliana for Rebel HQ.